we'll go ahead and we'll get started, guys. So yeah, this is the CPT webinar that we're doing today. So I am, in case you don't know, Andrew VanLew. I'm an F1 advisor here in the ISS office. My colleague, Ms. Ruby Bowles, is the other F1 advisor. And one of the two of us will be working with you to process your CPT applications. So when you come in to get your CPT processed. So we'll be going through this today. Please feel free, Nicholas, Tuan, Felix, Kinari, if you would like to ask any questions. If you could kind of wait till I get to the end of my thought, not just toss questions out there right when I'm in the middle of saying something, that would be great. But you're welcome to ask questions as we're going through. I will ask if you do have any personal questions that relate only to your specific case. If you could save those for the end, I'll be happy to answer those questions at that time. I just want to make sure that while we're doing this presentation, everything will be applicable to everybody. So we're all benefiting as much as we possibly can from the presentation. So we'll go ahead and we'll dive right into it. But first of all, what do you guys know about CPT? I always like to get a sense of where the students' knowledge is at.
So CPT is like we work during, like we did not graduate yet, but like we got an internship or co-op, so we can use CPT to work legally in the US for international students.
Okay, great. Anything else you guys know about it? Felix, Nicholas? Okay, I guess that's why you're here. So we'll go ahead and we'll jump right in. Oh, so what is CPT? So the way the Department of Homeland Security defines it, it's an alternate work-study internship, cooperative education, or a type of required internship practicum offered by sponsoring employers through cooperative agreements with the school. That's the very technical definition. But to jump in more, I'm more of a PowerPoint guy than a Prezi guy, as you can tell. There we go. All right. So in more layman's terms, it's a temporary employment authorization. It's issued by our office for off-campus work where you receive any form of payment, compensation, or any course credit for the experience. So it's supposed to be training that is designed to achieve an academic objective and or to fulfill an academic requirement. So it's not simply a work authorization. A lot of students look at this as get a work authorization, work outside of the university, make a bunch of money. I've seen people do those things. So some students get great jobs where they make very good money, but it's really important to remember that the way the government sees this, the way the Department of Homeland Security sees this, is that it's meant to achieve an academic objective, and it's supposed to be directly related to your major field of study. Must be directly related to your major field of study, or you're violating the idea of what CPT is supposed to be about, and you're making the Department of Homeland Security very unhappy. And we always like to keep the Department of Homeland Security as happy as we can at the University of Arkansas. Oh my goodness, what the heck? This computer is not liking me. All right, there we go. So employment, as I said before, must be directly related to your field of study. It can be part-time, so that would be less than 20 hours a week, or it can be full-time, 20 or more hours per week, and it can be paid or unpaid. So if you're going to do an unpaid internship, that's totally fine. If you're going to make, $6,000 a month, that usually doesn't happen. Good luck though. Wish the best for you. If you can find $6,000 a month, you can do that. There's no limit on the amount of pay. So the big thing is that it has to be directly related to your field of study. So pay, it does not matter.
I have a question. So is there any limitation for the maximum hours that we can work during a week? Is there any maximum?
So if you're doing part-time CPT, then you can't go above 20 hours. If you're doing 20 or more, then if you're doing full-time CPT, then it doesn't matter. You can do as many as you want, only for the employers that you're authorized for.
I see.
So once authorized, you can work only for a specific employer at a specific location and for specific dates as approved by our office on the second page of the Form I-20. So when we issue your I-20 for CPT, it'll have the employer information on the back. It'll talk about the dates. It'll say if you're doing full-time CPT or part-time CPT, and you absolutely have to have that I-20 in order to begin work, or you are violating your status. Every CPT authorization must be an integral part of an established curriculum, either be an academic requirement for your program, or you must gain academic credit for the work you do. And it must be for training as agreed upon by your employer. So once again, this is training in your major field of study for your future career, is the way the Department of Homeland Security sees this. And you may request CPT if an internship is required of all degree candidates, so in your program, or you can earn academic credit for the work you will perform, such as a co-op or internship, etc. And remember, CPT is only available if you are currently enrolled, not after completion of your current program or after you have completed all coursework. So do we have any graduate students? Okay, we got Tuan, Kinari. Okay, so for you guys, if you're working on thesis dissertation only, you're not able to do CPT. So except under very specific circumstances, which we'll talk about. So typically you're only supposed to do CPT during coursework, except under very specific circumstances. So important thing to keep in mind, because once that coursework is done, you're done with any eligibility for CPT.
How do you define the coursework is done? Like, so I'm in the final years, so I want to get an internship before graduated. So,
so are you still taking classes, or are you just working on like thesis or dissertation?
Dissertation, but
okay. So
I can enroll for another class if I want to.
So it would have to be, so once you've completed all your coursework towards your degree program, then you wouldn't be able to do CPT unless you fit one or two very specific criteria. You can't just add like, you know, a UREC class and say that you still have coursework and then get authorized for CPT. So the Department of Homeland Security would not like that. So we wouldn't be able to authorize that, unfortunately.
I see.
All right. And so CPT valid status for 1 year. So you have to be, you have to be in F1 status for 1 year and must have been lawfully enrolled full-time for at least one academic year, 30 weeks of instructional time. Must. And that means a fall quarter or a fall semester and a spring semester full-time enrolled to be considered full-time for that 1 year. So this is a requirement of CPT. And you can contact a foreign student advisor to ensure that you are enrolled in full-time status. Of course, full-time status, 20 credit hours or more for you undergraduates, 9 credit hours for graduate students, or 6 credit hours with a graduate assistantship. And, very important point, start and end dates are holy stuff, very important stuff with CPT. So start dates, authorization may begin as early as the day after the last day of the semester prior to the CPT semester. That's totally confusing wording. So if we're looking at spring semester, what would be the earliest date that I could start CPT for the spring semester based on this information?
May, I guess May, the last day of class, May something, 20. Is it correct? Before summer, right? Spring, summer. Yeah.
So you're talking about summertime CPT, but what about for springtime CPT?
January.
Oh, no.
Would that be December, like the first Monday after finals?
Ooh. So you could do the day after the semester ends. So if the semester ends on December 17th, that means you could start on
18th.
There you go. So yeah,
even
December
if it's
18th,
like a weekend.
Sorry.
Even if it's a weekend.
Yeah, we can do that. Absolutely. So yeah, that's the earliest date. End dates. Authorization can be granted either through the last day of finals of the CPT semester or through the day before the next semester's classes begin. I can't remember what the end date is for the spring semester. I should know that. But so if it were May 7th, so you would be able to work up to May 7th in situation number 1, or through the day before the next semester's classes begin. And so that would be up to the start of summer. So for spring. So spring semester, you have a long stretch of time that you can participate in CPT for an employer. So we already talked about this with the example. And end date, this can also be affected by your graduation date, expected defense date for your thesis or dissertation, or the type of course credit you take for CPT. So you can check with our office if you have any questions about this. But yeah, start and end dates are very, very important because you're only authorized to work for the window of time that we put on the back of your I-20. If you start before, you violated status. If you go past, you violated status. And oh yeah, I was just talking about this, but we always like to have, we want to show you how dangerous and awful it is when somebody works outside of the times that they are authorized for. Never work before or after the specific CPT employment dates authorized on your I-20. Never, never, never. Never work for an employer other than the one authorized on your I-20. So for the CPT, can't work outside of that time. I've had students who they got authorized to start, we'll say on January 3rd, but then they found out that they had an orientation or training on January 2nd. So I told them that they had to come back because orientation and training is still considered employment activity. Told them we need to issue you a new I-20 to reflect that date, because if you go and do that orientation or training before the date on your I-20, you just violated your F1 status. We have to terminate your immigration record, and then you need to try and regain status. So, which means traveling outside the United States in many cases, and just, tosses your life upside down in the air. And also very importantly, only one employer with each authorization. It's actually possible to have 2 employers. A lot of our musicians will do that. They'll get lots of different gigs, working at different, like maybe playing at a church or doing a concert or participating in a symphony. That's all fine, but each employer has to be authorized. This is not a general work authorization like with OPT. You're only authorized to work for the companies or the institutions listed on the back of the I-20. And if you take CPT as a research credit, meaning thesis or dissertation hours, your academic advisor or dean must provide an explanation as to how and why the CPT is required for your research and why this research cannot be performed on campus. So this is one thing I was talking about earlier, Tuan, about special exceptions for people who have thesis or dissertation. It is possible to be authorized for CPT when you have all your coursework completed, but only in very specific circumstances. And this is one of them. If you absolutely need to go and do some kind of work or training off campus, it is possible to be authorized for CPT after you've completed coursework, but there has to be a very good justification for it. And that justification has to come from the academic advisor. So we cannot just take your word for it. And graduate assistants, if you have graduate assistantship, there are additional steps to be sure you may be authorized for CPT. So just check with us for details. And CPT and taxes. So review your paycheck stub to see if you are having taxes withheld. In particular, check to see if you are being charged Social Security and Medicare tax. Many, but not all F1 students are exempt from Social Security and Medicare taxes. So that's a great thing. So make sure that you're not paying into Social Security. I mean, that's great for me because for when I retire, you'll be paying me money, but you're not going to be retiring in the United States most likely. So keep that money for yourself. Don't just hand it to me, even though I would like that. If you are unsure about how to address either of these issues, you can email Shelly Gahagans at this email address. My understanding is that she will be retiring at the end of this semester, so there will be a new person in charge of that office as far as this is concerned. We'll get this updated once we find out who that replacement is going to be, but this will be relevant up to the end of the semester. And Social Security. If you do not have a Social Security number, you can apply for a Social Security number once you have obtained a new I-20 authorizing CPT. So very strange thing. So first you get the work authorization, then you apply for the Social Security number. This is the way that it works. And it's very important that you do have that Social Security number, because that's how they take out those tax dollars from your paycheck. If you're not paying taxes on the work you're doing, that's fun in the short term, but that's very bad in the long term, because that means going to jail because you're not getting taxed for your work. And you'll be able to apply for a Social Security number only after your CPT is approved. F1 students only qualify for a Social Security number if they can prove that they have employment in the US, as we were just saying. And travel. So the I-20 with CPT authorization can contain a travel signature by request. So if you plan to travel while on CPT, bring all immigration documents, including all I-20s and your proof of employment. So it's actually easier for our office if we sign your I-20 for travel at the same time that we do it for CPT. Instead of you having to come in for 2 consultations, it's a waste of time for you and it's a waste of time for us. So we're happy to take care of both of those at the same time. So remember, these travel signatures are valid for how long?
6 months, right?
Wow, very nice. Yeah, you should go on a game show, CPT game show. So that was very quick timing. All right. And frequently asked questions, some very, very important things to consider. Where do I find the start and end dates of CPT employment? As we said before, that'll be on the back of your I-20, page 2 of the I-20. It'll be right at the top, the very, very top. What's the deadline to apply for CPT? There is no specific deadline. Technically, we can authorize it any time of the year. It doesn't work out that way practically, though. It's advisable to start the application process as soon as you get an employment offer, as it may take time to complete the process through ISS Link and an appointment with ISS. And also remember, you do need to be enrolled in a course for CPT, and enrollment is only open for a certain window of time. So even though we can technically authorize it at any time, you won't be able to enroll in that course anytime. So it really requires you guys to plan ahead. How does the CPT internship credit relate to my degree plan? So on the CPT department form, your academic department will have to certify that your internship is directly related to your major and degree level, and that it meets one of the following: a mandatory requirement for all degree candidates in the program that cannot be waived. So I believe the information systems in the Walton College, it's required that they do an internship off campus. And so they're required to do CPT. Oh yeah, go for it, Nicholas.
I have a question, like how does this specifically relate to the field of study? Let's say, I mean, if I'm an industrial engineer, I cannot get an internship in a medical field, or let's say, or a banking job, things like that, even if they are accepting engineers.
So you know, the example I always use is like, so let's say you have you're majoring in psychology and you go to apply for Apple. Apple deals with mostly computers. But if you're doing stuff like, if you're like a psychologist, if you're like giving counseling to Apple employees, so who are dealing with stress, whatever the case, you're working for a computer company, but the work that you're doing is psychology. So okay, it's directly related to your major. So that's what you really need to look at is, are the duties that you're performing, are those consistent with what you're studying in your degree program? So okay, I'm not qualified. I don't know the first thing about industrial engineering. I don't know the first thing about 90% of the majors on campus.
Yeah, but that makes sense. I mean, that's easier to understand.
Okay, good. I'm glad that example worked.
Oh, and just one more. Is there any way we can double check before thinking, okay, this is related to my field, I'm not gonna have any issues? Is there, I mean, if we have an offer from, let's say, let's use your example from Apple and the
Mhm.
psychology. Is there any way we can like check or go to somewhere or ask someone like, is this okay before I accept it or not?
That's a great question. Sometimes it's very clear cut. One thing that I think there are a couple of engineering companies where they actually have civil engineer one is the title, and that's really easy to figure out if that's directly related to civil engineering. Not all jobs are as black and white. I'm not an expert, and there's no magical list that shows every single job that's available in the United States. What I always tell students to do is talk to somebody you respect in your field. Maybe that's an academic advisor, maybe that's one of your professors, and ask them, show them the job duties, and you can ask them, is this directly related to my major field of study? And really important to keep in mind, I've never heard of this being investigated. There was a lot more scrutiny during the Trump administration, but I always encourage students, be ready to, like, if you were ever asked how the work is related to your major, you should be able to explain it in a short amount of time. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, then don't take the position. And it can also be an integral part of the established curriculum that you'll earn academic credit and which course will be used for the credit. And it can also be required as part of the research for thesis or dissertation, as we said previously. And what will happen if I work over the date on the CPT authorization? You guys should all know this one. What happens?
It's termination of status.
Awful things. So yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, we have the mushroom cloud. Yeah, we have the unhappy face. And this, trust me, this is not exaggerating what people look like when they find out that they have violated their status. It's a horrible, painful, expensive process. So having your immigration record terminated. We had a really nice kid who I call him, he's not a kid, but you know what I mean. Sorry, I'm old. And so he was working on CPT. He worked past his expiration date on his CPT just by about a week. He was trying to finish up a project for his company, was just trying to be a good worker, but he violated his immigration status, and we found out about it. And when we find out, we're required by the law as part of our keeping international students on the U of A campus to terminate immigration records in that situation. And that was supposed to be the student's last semester at the U of A. And so if he wanted to be able to do OPT, he needed to study an extra semester, and he ended up studying an extra semester and delaying his life by 6 months, all because of a week extra of work. So please avoid that kind of situation. We hate seeing that happen. So yeah, you'll have your immigration record terminated. Very often you have to travel outside the United States. You have to pay for that. It's an embarrassing situation for most people. They don't like going back home and explaining that they're back home for this reason. Causes trouble with studies. Just don't let this happen to you. Can I travel abroad during CPT? Yeah, absolutely. You can travel abroad during CPT as long as it is acceptable to your CPT employer and you have requested and received a travel signature on your I-20. So yeah, this absolutely is possible, and we've definitely approved that in the past. Am I eligible for CPT if I fell out of status and was approved for reinstatement? That's a pretty rare case. And the guidance on that we have from the Department of Homeland Security isn't 100% clear. So it would be good for you to reach out to us, and we can look at your individual case if this is the case for you. But like I said, this is less than 1% of people. This is like 1% of 1% of people. So we'll deal with that on a case-by-case basis. If I fell out of status and made a new entry to the United States. So if you have that violation of status, so that violation of status occurs on January 15th. So that means you have to travel outside, travel back. Once you regain status, when you come back on January 17th, that's when your clock starts again to become eligible for CPT or OPT, that full-time enrollment that you're required to have to be eligible for those of 1 year. What if I studied full-time on another status for at least 1 year before changing to F1? This will sometimes happen with our H4 status students who go to F1. And the great thing is that time spent in another status that allows full-time study may count toward the 1-year requirement. So I've seen students study fall semester. So they were in H4, they worked full-time, or they studied full-time, and then they moved to F1 status in spring, were enrolled full-time, and then they applied for CPT to start in the summer. So that's absolutely possible. If I recently transferred from another school, again, as long as we have that continuous year, your time at another CEV-P school counts towards the 1-year requirement if you maintain valid F1 status continually. So those are both great things for you, the student. And the actual process of applying for CPT. Every semester, we have a number of people who they think it's my responsibility to get them all set up for CPT. And so very often it's, where's my CPT? Where's my CPT? So it doesn't work that way. The vast majority of the work, the time that's put in, is actually done by you guys, the students. So what you do is so much more. You complete so many more of the steps. All we really do is review to make sure everything is in order, and we issue you that I-20 in the consultation. That's really all we do. What we do takes maybe usually about 15 minutes. What you guys do is going to take a couple of hours, most likely. So first, have to obtain a job offer. Got to get an offer. Many students have worked for Walmart in the past. Many have worked for JB Hunt, Tyson, but we've also had people work at smaller companies. And even though I'm not an advisor, a career counselor, one thing that you can start looking at, one of the few very good things that came out of the pandemic, is a lot more companies are willing to hire people remotely. So I've seen students go and get authorized for employment in New Jersey, in California, even though they were physically present in Arkansas. So don't think that you're only confined to the Arkansas area. And complete the online e-form. So engineering students also complete the engineering co-op form. So Bell Engineering has their own process. And so you'll need to talk to the contacts in Bell Engineering for that at the co-op. The e-form though, looks like this. So of course, this is taken out of ISS link. So you can see the menu bar that you normally have when you're in ISS link. Here is F1 practical training. And then you select curricular practical training, and then you just complete the application. And next, still not talking to ISS. Well, I'm still not doing anything yet. I'm just doing whatever I do in my office. You're the ones doing all the work. So next, your academic or co-op advisor must verify that the employment is related to your major program and determine the appropriate course credit. So you'll need to talk to the people in your department. So for Walton undergraduates, you'll talk to Kayla Wassner. For people who are in engineering, you'll talk to people in the engineering co-op, but that's got to be approved first. A lot of times students will click submit and they'll think, I'm done. I'm going to go schedule an appointment with Andrew. Still don't get to schedule an appointment with Andrew. Andrew will cancel your appointment if you schedule, and he'll ask you to reschedule with him if that happens, or Ms. Bowles will have to do it. We'll do it politely, but it's going to push things back for you. Because then you also have to enroll in the course related to CPT employment. And this is probably what takes the longest for students to have completed successfully. Even once Walton, Bell, your academic advisor gets you enrolled, it takes time for it to show up in UA Connect. So this is a great thing to try and take care of as early as you possibly can, because this is the most common thing that holds up CPT applications and keeps people from being able to start CPT on the date that they want to. So pay attention to when that first day of enrollment starts for any given semester that you're thinking about doing CPT, because yeah, that's the earliest date that you can take this action. We will look in UA Connect when you come to your appointment. If that is not registered in UA Connect, the course that you're required to be enrolled in, we will not authorize your CPT. Please keep that in mind. Even if your academic advisor or the co-op tells us that they've enrolled you, we have to see it in UA Connect before we will authorize. And then Once all of that is completed, now you can schedule an appointment with a foreign student advisor, Ms. Bowles or myself, to receive a CPT I-20 in order to begin CPT employment. Steps 1 through 4 must be completed before you may schedule this appointment. And like I said, we've had to tell many people to reschedule because they will make the request for an appointment too soon. So, like I said, the vast majority of this is under your control. So, and that's one of the great things. So some students, they want us to do all the work, but the great thing is that you guys have so much control and so much ownership over this. So you can make this go as fast as you want to. So that's one of the great things about you guys being responsible for most of the steps. You don't have to worry if Andrew's being lazy in his office or anything like that. But if you have any questions, so you're always welcome to log on to live chat. 8:30 to 9:30 is my normal time that I am on live chat if you want to speak with me specifically, especially sometimes when people attend a CPT seminar or webinar with a specific person, they like to talk to that person through live chat because you've kind of made that connection. This is actually incorrect. I will need to correct this afterwards. Apologies, everyone. 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. That should actually say noon to 1 p.m. So I do apologize for that. Once again, that's noon to 1 p.m. And that's with my colleague, Ms. Bowles. And then from 4 to 5:30, it would be Audra Johnston. So our supervisor is on live chat. And this is Monday through Friday, and we're happy to help you. Any questions that anybody has about any of this?
So,
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
okay. So for CPT, like we have 1 year of permit, right? Working authorization for 1 year in the CPT.
So not necessarily, but I know where you're coming from. So you can do up to 1 year of full-time CPT and keep your OPT. Once you've done 365 days or more of full-time CPT, you've lost OPT related to that degree program.
Okay, so if you don't have.
Sorry. Just one last thought. But you can work as many days of part-time CPT as you want. That will not affect OPT. And I'm sorry, go ahead, Kinari.
Okay, so that's what I'm like. If let's say I am not eligible for the OPT right now, because since I used one OPT during my first master, so second time I am not eligible. So let's say during that 1 year period of CPT, if my employer wish or want me to keep in the company and offer something like H1B kind of thing, so is that thing possible for
to go from CPT to H1B?
Yes, from transferring from F1 to H1B.
I've heard of that when doing OPT and STEM OPT. I've never heard of that with H1B or with a CPT.
CPT, okay.
So that would be pretty tricky. I've never heard of that happening. That doesn't necessarily mean it can't happen. But, you know, once you started the program, you know, if you go to H1B, then you're done with the program. So.
Yeah, I mean, so since I already have one master before, and I use little bit time for my OPT after my first master. So let's say after in this degree, and if I go for CPT and
if it were a doctoral degree, you wouldn't be able to do another master's degree. Because you can only do OPT related to one degree program at one level. So once you've done it for master's, you can't do it again for another master's. You'd have to go up to a doctorate. So if you wanted to do OPT again.
That's right. That's right. So that's why this is my second master. Right now I'm in master program. So after that, I don't have any option of OPT. So whatever I have, that is only CPT. And during the CPT, I'm thinking of transferring. If everything works out, then might be a possibility like I can go with another work permit H1 or something like that.
So that's something where I'm not an immigration attorney, and usually H1B is something you would do with an immigration attorney. So you could reach out to an immigration attorney about that, but that's typically, I've never heard of that happening, but an immigration attorney would be able to tell you what's possible and what's not.
Okay. All right. So it's not holding back from if immigration attorney or another employer might wish to offer me H1B, but that is not kind of thing holding back from here. from my F1 status.
Not to my knowledge. Again, I've never heard that. You might want to check with Ms. Johnston. So she'll be on live chat in 15 minutes.
Okay.
So, but yeah, but anything else as far as getting authorized for CPT specifically?
I have a question. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
please.
Oh, yeah. So it's kind of related with CPT and OPT. So if we worked for, let's say, 150 years of days of CPT, does that like reduces our total OPT time? Or I mean, it's just like two separate things. Like it's not okay.
No. So you can work 330 days of full-time CPT and get the full amount of OPT. As soon as you hit 365, your OPT is gone. But yeah, that's a great question, but no, it doesn't affect it until you hit 365. There's zero impact. And you could do like 300 days of full-time CPT and then 100 days of part-time CPT. I've never heard of that happening. That would be a lot of time spent doing CPT, but theoretically it's possible.
Okay.
Other questions? Felix? Tuan? Kinari?
Well, I have some personal questions. So I'm just gonna wait to the end.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Anybody else? CPT questions? No? All right. Well, once again, so this isn't your last chance. You can actually even, like I said, we've been recording this. This is going to go up to YouTube probably by about Monday. So if you want to watch yourselves, if you want to be YouTube sensations for CPT, you can always do that. We'll have that up there on our channel. You can also reach out to us through live chat. You can schedule a consultation if you want to talk about your case specifically. Very often when I attend a seminar like this, or if I go to a doctor's appointment, I'll walk out, I'll think I understand everything, and then I go for a walk for like 15 minutes, and then I have 3 questions pop into my mind. If that happens to you, you can just log into live chat or schedule a consultation. But yeah, we can go ahead and we'll end things.